Hello there, welcome back. That's the last video of the day. This is Creed 3, looking at Creed 3, which is the spin off to the Rocky series. And this film has no right to be as good as it is. A spin off to a very cheesy but enjoyable series. You'd expect to have fallen away by now, really. You really would expect it to have died after the first film. But no, this one keeps on chugging away. And now it's pretty much. We're now into the third one, and it's actually managed to move beyond the Rocky character himself. It is no longer featuring Rocky at all in the film. And this is a really strong film. You know, this is, I guess it's my favourite of the three, to be honest. I think this one just works better. And a lot, it's one of the reasons why it works so well was Michael J. B. Jordan as director. As he was the lead actor in the first two, but now in the third one, he's directing it. And he does bring a kind of very kind of, he understands the melodrama of it, and he understands to throw in human touches rather than just based on the melodramatic elements. And he understands to force in subtlety as well as playing up the melodrama. You need to play it up, so it becomes a very human film, even though it is following a formula you've seen before. It's one of those examples of why some like westerns or thrillers work over others. It's just like the commitment of the actors and the director and the writers just work, while other films they don't put that kind of commitment into it. So that's kind of the reason why this film works as well as it does, and it's far better than it really should be. You know, for where it is in a series. Because I mean, this is like the ninth in this series now, so it's getting to the point where most series would have collapsed quite a while ago. I mean, they're into the Rise of Skywalker territory now, or Fast 9 territory. Look at how ridiculous those series have grown up to that point. So, the big thing that is got is it's got a lot of history now, and which you can build upon. And it can build upon the first two films and not be obliged to them, but it can build upon what's happened there and still do its own thing. And it's a film that's confident in it, knows what you expect from this film, so it can subvert it a little bits here or there. It can still deliver on what you want, but it can do it in other ways. Like, one of the best things with this film is the final fight's not the point. It's what happens after the final fight is the point, which is a nice little twist on it. Really is, like, because normally in Rocky it's the final fight, but even in the Rocky films, it's always like, what's he trying to prove to himself with the fight? And this one's the same, but what he's trying to prove himself is more complicated than what you normally get in these other films. So it's a nice variation of what you've seen and what you expect. It does its own thing. And it's also one of those things is one of those films where if you're not from another culture, if you've watched a film from another culture, and this happens in any culture. I mean, like, I've seen Scottish films that no one gets, that because the directors think that you know more than you do, just in some of the language that's used, like the shortcuts that any culture uses, that anyone in that culture understands, but from the outside you'll be able to go, I don't quite get that. This film uses a lot of lingo that you've seen films before, but it gives it context to make it understandable to people who are not in that culture of what certain mannerisms mean. Like with the same respect and things like that in this film. It's not shorthand, they actually show you what it means to the characters in a way that's very understandable. That's a different culture from my culture, but I understand what they mean by that with just little looks and little movements that a lot of films don't do. And this film does that all the time. It's just these little moments that it understands that you might not know every little bit of the culture. It doesn't stop to explain it. It just makes sure when the writing and the playing of the scenes that you understand the nuances more than you do in other films from that culture. I hope I explained that properly. It's just there is more. It does just seem to understand that you won't get every in joke, and it helps you understand it without explaining it too much, but you get it more. And the film does that really well throughout. And that's the Creed series has done that a lot, actually. The Creed series has had that kind of thing where it's trying to take into culture that, let's face it, the black culture in America, you've seen it for years. You understand some bits about it, but there's other bits you're not going to understand. And the Creed series has been very good at actually making you understand the little nuances here or there that's different from a white person's experience. But they do the little bridge. This film does it better, I think, than even the first two. Also, the thing the film really does well is like grounding the reasons for the melodrama and grounding the fact that, as usual in these films, it has to be a flaw in the lead character to make the film work. It can't just be he's perfect. It has to be like, no, he's got some problems, he's got some flaws, and the villain's the externalization of the flaws. But in this case, the guy who's the antagonist is not really the villain. I mean, he's got rights to be angry. I mean, he doesn't behave well a lot of the time, and he's got a lot of demons too. But by the end of it, you actually got the idea, much better understanding both the characters and what they're both fighting for, and why they're both angry. And it humanizes it, and it's about them actually coming to terms with their past and what each other has done in the past. And it's not really so there is a flashback that slowly evolves. So you find out more and more what happened in the past between them, how these two people were close suddenly aren't close anymore. And by the time you get there and you get into the flashback and into the story, it's humanized in a much more interesting way you expect. And it becomes more complicated than you expect a film like this to actually do. Because it is more in terms of coming to terms with your mistakes and your actions rather than, oh, it's your fault, oh, it's his fault, oh, it's my fault. It's like, no, it's complicated. This film understands the complexities of all the characters' behaviours. So different characters do things throughout the film that initially think that's a bit dodgy. Then you get to get the reasons behind it. It's like, no, that was just another point of view of the story. And the film does that really well. It's like the Adonis character, he's got his passions, but he's not always right. And one of the things the film does, because Michael B. Jordan's the lead actor and director, you would expect some ego involved, like he gets all the good close-ups. And that's when he doesn't. He actually stays on the other actors a lot. And then when he cuts back and forward, it's cutting back to when there's a point for why you should see his reaction. But a lot of the time when he's working with someone else, he gives them a lot of space in the scenes so you can see what they're doing rather than having it just be about how his character reacts to it. It's a scene between the two characters. It's not just about him. And as an actor and director, he understands that and he actually respects that in the filmmaking. And that happens again and again in filmmaking, which means by the time you get to the end, it has a build to it. It has a logic to it where you realize it's not just about him, you know. And so the way he's been directing it actually brings it home a lot easier because he's actually resisted the urge to make it himself in the cutting and in the staging. He's given the other actors the space to actually show the characters and not be caricatures. So that's a very good thing in the film. Also, it does a couple of things that is not as very anime influenced and very kind of art housey at the end fight where they go into the heads of the characters in the final battle, and the audience disappears for them, and it's very much like a stylized thing that could have gone really wrong, but it works really well because it's going from stage to stage inside their head. So you understand what the logic of the scenes are. And even though it's a bit stylized, you understand it. And it doesn't go on for too long. It goes on just long enough for you to understand where they're at, and then it goes back to normality. And that's another thing the film does, is it knows when to quit in a sequence. Like the training sequence, when the fight's going to be on, fight between Adonis and his antagonist, his old friend, you have a very good training sequence to get you pumped up the final fight, but it does not go on forever, which is something that happened a little bit in the Rocky series. You did feel sometimes the training sequences were a bit too high in Stallone doing his training stuff. They were fun, but they weren't into camp sometimes, into ridiculousness. This film doesn't do that. It knows what you're looking for, but also knows enough's enough. I'm going to get into the fight soon. You know, knowing where to quit is good. And this film knows when to quit. In the dialogue scenes and in the action stuff, it knows when to do a balance that, because the film does have a humanist point of view of it's about the characters, not all just the melodrama. The quiet moments are important to build up to the end of the story. It knows to stop and not go way over the top with the training sequences, or even Final Fight. Final Fight could have been way more over the top, but it's not. It's actually, there's a lot of good scenes, but it's the fight that goes back and forward. You get the tactics of the fight, you get the tactics of what they're doing in the fight, and it gets in and out and actually gets to the point so that the finale can be about the two characters. But it doesn't feel like you've cheated in the fight. You've still had a really good fight. So the film does so much right, you know, that it's really pleasurable to watch. It's one of those, I think it's one of the better films in the Rocky series. It's one of the strongest films there, because it does a lot with what could be a constraint of being like film number 9 in the series. It takes what we know about the series and actually just uses it as a strength to build another story around the conventions you expect. So it's a really strong film, a really enjoyable film. So I would definitely recommend seeing this, but I think it's a lot better than the second one. The second one had the advantage of Ivan Drago coming back and his son. And his son comes back to the third one as a sparring partner for Adonis, and it's obviously they're now friends. And there's little touches of that throughout the film, there's little details. And you get Tessa Thompson as his wife, she's got her own career going on, and she's trying to deal with his problems and he's not communicating. And that relationship works well. As he's got a daughter now and she's deaf, and he's dealing with her, and that relationship works well in the film as well. So there's lots of little details. But I think this one was stronger than the second one. You know, I like this one more than the first. The first one's also a very good film, but it's definitely stronger than the second. And it's been Ryan Coogler, who directed the first one, first Creed, has been doing the Black Panther films ever since. And I think the Creed series has been stronger than Black Panther series, to be honest. I think this is more human and more emotional, and just, I think, is, for me at least, is more impact, because it just feels much more on a human level, you know. So that's me, that's my tip, that's my feeling. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back with some more probably next week. So I'll see you then. Bye for now.